Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our Big Brother 19 live feed update for August 24th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and today I've brought you a man with a great voice. It's Dustin. How you doing, Dustin?
Thank you. My sultry voice is here. We're here. We have a lot of exciting things to talk about over the last 24 hours. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. This might hold the record for least amount of notes for a given day. So this may be a quick update for you. Not a whole lot has happened in the last 24 hours. But let's get started. We'll get into everything that did happen on the feeds yesterday. We started the day off. Paul is still talking about how Mark was calling him a floater last night, campaigning against him and Christmas and Josh. He's trying to get ahead of this. He talks to Matt about it. He says what happens, but he says it's actually a good thing that Mark thinks that I'm a floater, because if anyone knew my true loyalties, then it would put a big target on the fact that I'm protecting you guys. So it's good that people see me as playing the whole house. I mean, this is just classic Paul spin.
Yeah, it's spin. The only problem I have with it is that he's trained everybody else in the house to think that the person that's going out, everything that they're spewing is BS. So he's got kind of a conundrum there that, Mark is calling him a floater, yet they're not supposed to believe anything he says. But at the end of the day, I guess Paul is happy to not have any kind of bright, shining target on him. And Mark is actually, completely wrong in this whole scenario. Paul is by no means a floater, other than the sense that he is floating between the different pairs. That's the only way that I would consider him a floater.
Yeah, the typical definition of a floater would be somebody that floats between the power, like to wherever the power is. Paul is almost in some ways like the complete opposite, where he just, wherever he floats, the power goes.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
He chooses where the power goes depending on wherever he floats to. That's Paul's game, the anti-floater.
Right. So instead of one life vest, we're going to need about 8 life vests.
Yeah. And of course Matt is buying this up, eating it like it's cereal. Raven is still mad about her bracelet. She's still mad that Kevin took the bracelet. She's convinced that Kevin took the bracelet. And man, every time I talk bad about Raven, somebody's mic stand falls. So
it's part of her ghost hunting thing. She's put a hex on you, and now the ghosts are after your microphone stand. We're going handheld this episode, Taran. Looks like.
Oh yeah, no time to put this back up.
Yeah.
So, she's still mad. She says, not only is she into this ghost thing, but she also thinks that like Kevin, he's like a magician. He's got quick hands, so he could easily be the one to take the bracelet, and also probably get my mic to fall. So, Kevin's evil. Clearly.
Yeah. The only sleight of hand Raven's seen in this house is Matt's, but. I really like the theory that was brought up. I think it was on yesterday's update. I'm sorry, but I like the theory that Raven did it herself, just seeking attention. That's my absolute favorite thing, because it totally would be something that she did. Who knows? I mean, why would Kevin do this? This is ridiculous.
Oh, Kevin has zero. Like, why? Of course he wouldn't do this. Like, I really wish we had like. The second that she started talking about this, I was just like, oh, please, just like, I wish there was a feed that was just dedicated to watching the bracelet as soon as she put it down. Like, what happened with the bracelet?
She doesn't know that because we signed up for CBS All Access, there's a camera dedicated to her, apparel and accessories.
Yeah, of course. I feel like what they should do is put it on the TV show and have a whole segment of like Bracelet Gate, and then do a time lapse of like where the bracelet was, and then follow it around and see what happened. I feel like that would be fun.
Yeah, chances of this making on the TV show. 0.
Yeah. At some point they've got to show like more of Raven's eccentricities.
Yeah,
so we also had just more. I mean, this was a lot of just Matt and Raven are still targeting Jason. Jason and Alex are still targeting Matt. And we're going to trash talk Raven as much as possible throughout the day.
Yeah, and that's basically what we watched over the last 24 hours. It's just a lot of posturing and positioning for next week. And those particular two pairs are really going after each other. It seems like more people in the house have their interests going against Jason and Alex. But for the most part, it's kind of a toss-up because we see a lot of people in the house trash talking Matt and Raven anytime they leave a room. So it's hard to know exactly what the real plan is versus, just the trash talking that's going on against Matt and Raven, especially after the whole prophylactic gate of, the last 48 hours or whatever.
Yeah, it's really like Raven is just getting on people's nerves so much that they just can't stop complaining about her at this point. She's dancing terribly and like complaining a lot, and it's people are getting very annoyed, and there's just a lot of anti-Raven talk and a lot of anti-Kevin talk as usual.
And then Paul looks at all that anti-Kevin, anti-Raven talk, and his eyes get real big and say, well, this is the perfect person to sit next to at the end.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
That's where we're going. That's where we're headed.
He's like, who should I bring to my final five? The two most hated people, Raven and Kevin. I love it. So we also have Christmas talking to Josh. She tells him something that she told Paul the other day as well, something very similar. Basically, I will take a bullet for you or Paul because I feel like you guys deserve to be in the final two, and I don't think I can take it home.
Yeah, my ex-cousin-in-law is really doing me proud right now. What a great player that, she would just legitimately throw down and lay down and die for these two guys. What is she doing? I don't understand this.
I don't know. And again, like, you'd think that part of this must be that she's playing them, because like, who would give up $500,000 or the potential for $500,000 for two people that they just met? But when she's talking to the cameras alone, she's saying similar things like, oh, I do think Paul deserves to win. Or like, even if he doesn't win, I feel like, he won just by getting to the end. And it's just like, what are you doing? Why? Like, people have been complaining about, all sorts of people, like Matt, who's not playing, Alex, who's talking about being willing to lose to Paul. But Christmas seems like the person this is starting to get down to the end, and she's still talking about this.
Yeah, the one good thing about Christmas I'll give her is that, she's at least in the middle of all these talks with the big groups. She didn't get in like a showmance or something where she's completely on the outs. She's at least positioned herself where, when there's a big group of people, she's a voice that everybody wants to hear her opinion and stuff like that. But the one opinion I just don't want to hear from her is that she would lay down and die. I can't wrap my head around it. It's why are you in this house? And this question could be asked for a lot of the other players still in the house. Why are you here? Why are you here?
Yes, Shelly in the chat says the Grinch that didn't steal $500,000. So we have a question from Michael. Who should win HOH? I guess that depends on what the goal is. Paul wants Josh, Christmas, Matt, or Raven to win the HOH so that they will go after Jason. And basically, Matt and Raven would love for Josh and Christmas to have to take that shot, but they, they're not going to take that risk. Alex and Jason want to win themselves so that they can go after Matt. And Paul does not want to win because he doesn't want to be part of the betraying at the moment. If you want to see the craziest outcome on the feeds, you probably want Alex or Jason or even Kevin. They will go after Matt, which will be kind of a boring week. Sure, but it will give a little bit. It will kind of throw a wrench into Paul's plans just a little bit and cause just a little bit more drama, I think.
It'll spice things up because the majority of the people do want Jason, and if for whatever reason Jason wins veto, then Alex. They want to get one of those pair out. I mean, obviously, I think Paul wants to take Alex a little bit further than he would like to take Jason. But we want to see those two guys are the next people that are really going to be down at the bottom. As viewers, it would be lovely to see them shake some things up. Again, a Matt eviction week. I mean, what is he going to do to fight for his life? Promise that he can make it to 500 bowls? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Speaking of, Nikki says, with it likely being endurance, Alex seems like the front runner. I've got to say that I agree with that. If we're thinking about endurance competitions, like which ones have they done already? They've done the wall. They've done slip and slide now. So.
And they did the one where they had to hold like a stick to a target. That's kind of endurance-y, where they had the punishments. They've been locked down for, I think it's 2 days now, 48 hours. So they're expecting a big build for the competition. And usually that results in one of these endurance comps. It might just be something where you have to stand on a podium, or I don't know what it is, but that's what they're banking on is endurance.
I'm thinking it's the spinny one, where they're on the little seat and they're spinning around,
Yeah.
getting hit by things. Yeah, that one, or theoretically it could be like that, the running one, where they got a race to get the button. I remember that one. In Big Brother 17. I don't think they did it in 18, but probably the spinny one, because it was such a big build. But yeah, that's I don't know. I don't know if that's not necessarily in Alex's wheelhouse, like not nearly as much as the wall, but it's hard to picture somebody like Raven winning that one, or Matt. He's probably a bit too heavy. So I feel like and obviously Christmas is going to win. I don't see Josh winning that. So I do think that we could probably see like a Jason or an Alex win here, which would throw a bit of a wrench into Paul's plans.
Jason was surprisingly good at the wall, considering he's 6'6". Usually that's built for slender, shorter, either males or females. He was surprisingly good. Obviously, Alex fits in that former category of being a very small, slender woman, so she's favorable in a competition like that. Paul's actually not that big of a guy, so if he really wanted to, he could do well, but everybody else is kind of out of the running because we got these big, huge people. And of course, Raven will find, maybe her arthritis will kick in, or her arthritis.
Arthritis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you are somebody that wants to see Paul fail or wants to see him work much harder than he is right now, you should be hoping that Alex and Jason go on a bit of a comp spree here. And it could start tonight. And we could see Matt and Raven split up next week, which, may cause a little bit of drama, but knowing Paul, probably not too much.
Yeah, and set your expectations, because if you really don't like Paul, he's still not going to go home in this. They're just going to target somebody else in the rest of the house.
Yeah, basically. All right, so then we had Paul. He has an argument here with Matt, or with Mark, sorry. And basically Mark is like, Cody wasn't that bad. And Paul's like, what do you mean Cody wasn't that bad? How could you say such a thing? And they get into this fight here. And, Mark is just basically saying, like, I just think it was ridiculous, like, that we kept going after Cody personally. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And Paul was like trying to be like, no. Cody went after me. You don't even know the full extent of it. Like, Paul really standing his ground here. And I don't know why this didn't really work for Paul very well, I think. And I tweeted this out, and it turned out to be a very controversial tweet, because I tweeted out, I think this is a big mistake in terms of jury management for Paul. And I got like a billion responses, half of which were like, how could you say such a thing? Cody was never going to vote for Paul anyway, and neither was Mark, and Paul is doing everything perfect. And the other half was like, well, obviously he's the worst player ever and he's going to lose. This is the greatest thing ever. So this is, I really feel like this was not a good move here, right? Because he's basically arguing like, no, it makes sense that I went after Cody personally. Cody is a bad person, and it's annoying Mark. He's like, well, Mark who is going on the jury is like, stop being so weird about it. Like, why can't you just be like, fine, maybe it did go a little bit overboard? Because now Mark is annoyed and he's going to go back to the jury house and be like, Cody, can you believe, like, not only did Paul come at you in the game on a pretty personal level, but he's still talking about it like weeks afterward. He's still like hung up on it. He still is like complaining about you in the house. And as much as Cody already doesn't like Paul, you have to imagine like this is like he might be sitting in the jury house being like, you know what, Paul is playing a pretty decent game. I'll give him that. What he was doing to me in the house was probably mostly game anyway. But if he's like, wow, he's still talking about me, like what's going on? Like, why is he so obnoxious? Maybe he is just an obnoxious person. Maybe I shouldn't vote for him in the end. Yeah,
I mean, it's a pointless move, really, because you have Mark in front of you, which is the one person left in that house that, you know, really legitimately liked Cody as a person and was friendly to him. You know, on his you know, exit week. Why try to convince Mark that Cody wasn't a good person or was bad? What you really want to do is set up the expectation for Mark as the next person that's going out that, hey, when you leave, we're not going to talk crap about you. We're going to be nice. You know, this is all business. But what he's doing instead is giving Mark a preview of what's going to turn around for him in the following weeks. They're going to talk crap about Mark after he leaves. So Mark is going to leave this conversation with a bad taste in his mouth. When Paul could have just been like, you know what? Cody was a tough competitor. Cody came after me. I had to take him out, but, you know, I still respect him. He could have just said that, and Mark would have been on board, and he would have left with a really great taste in his mouth from Paul in that conversation. It was pointless, and it's not a good look for Paul. That being said, I don't know that, again, it makes much of a difference, because I think people are still going to look at Paul at the end in the jury when Dr. Will or whoever comes in at this jury roundtable. They're going to be like, look, Paul's doing all this. He's making the moves. No matter what he said, personal against you, it doesn't matter. So I think that they're probably going to brush some of that aside, but still it leaves a bad taste.
Yeah, and you know, juries being very difficult to predict in the first place. It's just like, this is the last thing that you should be doing. Jury management is very hard to do, but there are things that you can do to avoid, like there are mistakes that you can very like obviously avoid, and I feel like this is one of them. Just don't argue with somebody about somebody else. If somebody is on their way to jury, don't argue with them about somebody else who is already in jury, making both of them annoyed, especially when there's a third person in the jury right now who will probably vote both, whichever way both of them vote as well. So, like theoretically, if this was a situation where there were any real contenders to Paul's throne here, he could have just lost 3 jury votes in this one conversation. Granted, again, this is Paul. This is Paul's season. There's not a lot of good alternatives to like, even if they were like, wow, we hate Paul, he's so annoying. If he's sitting up there next to Christmas, who is also super annoying, or, you know, even Josh, who is also super annoying, or Alex, who is also super annoying, or Raven, who everyone hates, it's kind of like, well, fine, we'll give it to the guy that actually played, even though we hate him just as much as the other person. But it's still not what I would prefer to see from somebody who is playing such a good game.
Yeah, and the other thing to note is, once, you know, Mark enters jury and there's the 3 of them, let's not forget the factor of they're going to get liquored up and forget all about their emotions and their feelings, and they're probably going to just look at this completely different. So it's, you know, you never know what's going to happen. I think that Paul has the talent to get away with this. But again, this just adds to the collective body of work that he's done in this house this season. If Paul can get away with all of this, hell of a job.
Yeah. All right. So we also had Paul asking Kevin about the whole Mark situation, because Mark was claiming that he had Kevin's vote locked up. And so Paul is, I mean, this was very suspicious to everyone. Paul questions Kevin about it, who denies adamantly, like, oh, I didn't promise him a vote. I don't know what he's talking about. He's going out 6-0. Like, don't worry about it. This is crazy. Nonsense. And then ultimately gets very annoyed here. He talks to Jason later and says, like, why are Alex and Paul always questioning me? Like, what's going on here? And Jason kind of tries to smooth it over a little bit, but Kevin is definitely starting to get very annoyed, and even a little bit at Paul now.
Yeah. And first of all, Jason is the Kevin whisperer in all these situations. Everybody thinks he's sketchy. Everybody thinks he's doing something behind their backs. And Jason seems to be the one guy that feels like, I really kind of like this guy. I don't want him to fail, but I'm going to bring him in. And the other thing is Kevin is doing some of these things. Kevin's in some ways, his version of jury management, and we've seen it with Cody and to some degree Mark. His version of jury management is giving them like a last ray of hope versus everybody else who's saying like, "Hey man, it's just a game. We'll hang out. We'll be bros after the season." Kevin gives them this little, like, he dangles a little bit of hope in front of them, and that comes off as bad when they finally get evicted. So he's doing things that the rest of the house isn't doing. And in this particular season, where we have a mob mentality, that is what's creating drama between the rest of the house and Kevin. It doesn't look great. And I think Paul sees that, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Paul sees that as a potential person to sit next to at the end. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know that that's his ideal final two, but at least he's got that in his back pocket.
Yeah, and when we're talking about this, like, this conversation to me, when Kevin was talking with Jason, he was talking about his frustrations. Jason was actually opening up a little bit and like being open about the fact that Alex and Paul are questioning Kevin. This was the moment for me where I was like, this could be it. He could bring up the $25,000 and all of that stuff could be revealed right now. And it came kind of close. Jason taunted it like just a little bit. Like, he mentioned the $25,000. He mentioned Ramses. He was like, Ramses, who threw that HOH competition and took that $25,000. All right.
Get the bite.
That could have been the conversation, and it could have set Jason off. Already still decently suspecting Raven for the veto. And all of that. I still think that there is some amount of just like, especially if Alex or Jason win next week, there's plenty of room for them to finally catch on to what Paul is doing. Paul is playing with a very dangerous game with allowing them to be on the outs right now with so much information against him. And not like there's much that they can do. They're still outnumbered at that point. But and even if they did try to put Paul up, he would not go home no matter what. I mean, let's think about this. Like, say Jason wins the HOH and then completely turns against Paul and tries to get Paul out of the house. Probably not going to happen, but we'll assume that they're going to try. If he puts Matt up against Paul, he'll have Raven's vote, he'll have Kevin's vote, he'll need to get Alex to vote him out as well. That would probably be the tricky part, and that would be the swing vote, right? Because Paul or Josh and Christmas would vote for Paul, so he would need to convince Alex to get Paul out. Even if they did find out the information against Paul in terms of like what Kevin was doing, unless they completely find out that Paul was gunning for them, it's not particularly likely, right?
Yeah, you're talking about this, especially in this particular scenario, having Jason as HOH and then Alex as a swing vote. At least they've been working together, and maybe Alex could take real stock in what Jason is trying to accomplish in his HOH. As it stands right now, if one thing is going to break against Paul, it's going to be that he's been keeping this huge secret the entire season, because everybody has built this certain level of baseline trust with him that they take a lot of his word as gospel. And if that comes out, that has the potential to shatter that trust, especially with Alex, who he has considered a very close ally. She has considered him to be a very close ally. And I think that if something pushed her over the edge to go against him, that would be it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, theoretically, we could see if Alex wins the HOH and she puts up Matt and Raven, the plan, which will probably save Paul, is to pretend that they're going to backdoor Kevin. And Paul will convince Matt and Raven, which will keep them comfortable enough to be completely complacent until the veto. And then once the veto happens, Paul is in the clear. One of them will go home. They can say all that they want, but Alex and Jason will still probably feel pretty comfortable. But if Matt or Raven, and I know that we're talking about Matt or Raven here, if they, for whatever reason, caught on to the fact that they are being played and that Paul is not trying to protect them, then we could theoretically see them go to Jason and Alex and be like, look, Paul was telling us to go after you guys. He was telling us to take Jason out. Alex and Kevin can't work together, and then we'll be able to use them. If they went to Kevin and said, Kevin, Paul has been talking crap about you. He said that you took the 25,000, and Kevin's like, what are you talking? He knew about the 25,000. He told me to cast these hinky votes. Then they start to catch on to the fact that Paul's playing them. They try to take him out, and they probably can if they do it before the veto. So this is my fan fiction portion of the day. But it's theoretically possible, and Paul tries to create situations where things are not theoretically possible, but he is in a little bit of trouble again because of this 25,000 thing. I really think that is the key to his downfall if it ever gets out. But we'd have to rely on Kevin to do that, and Kevin still, for the most part, even though he's annoyed with Paul, is still pretty loyal to Paul. So it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But we try.
Yeah, he's his closest confidant in terms of strategy and how to interact with other people. This whole plan that you're laying out relies on people comparing notes. That hasn't been a popular strategy this season.
Yeah.
And, Paul, the entire first season that he played on BB18, playing from the bottom. Of course, he had a meat shield in Victor, who got voted out 3 times to protect him. But he still, in that scenario, has the potential to have Josh and Christmas go in front of him and play from the rear if that scenario came up. We know he has the talent to do it. So I still like Paul's chances and all.
Oh yeah, and so I just played out like the thing that I think a lot of people want to have happen. But here's what will happen if Alex wins the HOH: she'll put up Matt and Raven. They'll convince them that Kevin is the backdoor target, and then when it turns out that guess what? Kevin wasn't the backdoor target. Matt is going to be like, "Oh no," and Paul is going to be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And Matt's going to be like, "No, it's okay. I need to jump on this grenade for Raven. She needs to stay in the game." And Matt will feel very noble, and he'll go home. And then next week they'll gun for Jason.
And then 5 years later, he'll look back at his life and say, "What the hell was I doing?"
Man, I was just my face was in a bowl of cereal that whole time. I couldn't see what was happening. Alex Kidwell will hopefully berate him as he gets out of the house. Like, what were you doing? All the cereal. All right. So that's our update for the day. I feel like we really milked that one.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern to update you on everything that happens with the eviction tonight, the HOH, who they plan on nominating, all of that. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about. We'll be live tonight. I believe I will be stepping in for Rob, who is busy in Salt Lake City, to talk about the live eviction and the HOH. It will probably be the start of the HOH if there is an endurance competition. And make sure you check out the Taran Show with Eric Stein. Very, very fun stuff there.
I can't go another episode without chiming in about the Taran Show. Again, you keep releasing these episodes that seem to be specifically tailored to me. Eric Stein did video production and television work and stuff like this. My gosh, you're doing a great job, Taran. These interviews you're knocking it out.
Yeah, and I mean, this one in particular, too, even if you're just a Big Brother fan or whatever, he talks a lot about Big Brother 8 and his experience there, which was very, very interesting to me. Makes some bold claims about his ability as a Big Brother player, which I very much enjoyed. So, yes, thank you so much for checking it out. I don't know what's confirmed. David is asking, is it Aubrey or Adam? I believe it is Aubrey tonight. That's what I think. I am not Alex Kidwell, though, so I don't know that for sure. But I think it's Aubrey.
Well, if it is, I'll bring my adult coloring books, and we'll go to town.
Yes, this is Aubrey from Survivor. She will hopefully be on tonight. That'll be a lot of fun. So make sure you check it out. We will see you next time.